back to reliable sources. The new Democratic House delivered on some of its promises this week, raising the minimum wage to $7.25 an hour, loosening federal restrictions on stem cell research, and changing the rules for Medicare drug prices. How much did you see about those issues, especially on television? Chances are, not very much. Joining us now to talk about the media's handling of Congress, the war, and one celebrity food fight, Rachel Maddow, host of The Rachel Maddow Show on Air America Radio. She's in Springfield, Massachusetts. And in Seattle, Michael Medved, host of The Michael Medved Show on Salem Radio. Michael Medved, minimum wage, stem cell, Medicare drug prices. I know the war is the dominant issue, but these very important questions haven't really gotten much coverage, have they?
Well, they haven't gotten nearly enough. They've given more coverage to Nancy Pelosi's status as the first female Speaker of the House of Representatives. And what really struck me most about the coverage of the first 100 hours of the Democratic House was how different it was from the first 100 hours of the new Republican House back in 1995 when Newt Gingrich took over. You may remember before Newt even came to power, there was a Time cover that said the Gingrich who stole Christmas. There was a Newsweek cover that used the same pun. And it was all this talk about Newt Gingrich and the barbarians are going to be coming storming Washington and taking lunches away from the poor and destroying America's social network. The coverage of Nancy Pelosi has been almost entirely a Valentine. She's handled it well. I give her all the credit in the world, but there is a very, very striking difference between the negativity toward a new Republican House and the very positive, glowing response to a new Democratic House.
We have talked about that contrast on this show. Rachel Maddow, if you compare the coverage of the House boosting the minimum wage for the first time in 9 years to $7.25 an hour versus David Beckham signing with an LA soccer team, not even close, was it?
Well, David Beckham is really, really cute. And you do have to factor that into this. So that is important.
If only I had factored that into the equation.
Yes, exactly, the cute factor. I think that in response to Michael's point, just briefly, I would say that the Contract with America agenda that the Gingrich Republicans came in with in '94 was a much more controversial agenda than the Democrats' first 100 hours agenda. If you look at the poll numbers on how Americans feel about what the Democrats wanted to do in their first 100 hours, they're very, very, very popular steps. So politically, I think there's a little bit of a cost to the Democratic Party in that they're doing all these very popular things that in partisan terms you would want them to get a lot of credit for, things like the minimum wage, implementing the 9/11 Commission recommendations. By doing them so quickly, they're maybe losing a little bit out on their partisan advantage they could gain if they were instead to stretch them out over a long period of time.
One thing that happened this week, Michael Medved, California Senator Barbara Boxer had some striking criticism for Condoleezza Rice at a hearing. I want to play a little bit of that and the Secretary of State's response on Fox News.
Who pays the price? I'm not going to pay a personal price. My kids are too old and my grandchild is too young. You're not going to pay a particular price, as I understand it, with an immediate family. So who pays the price?
Gee, I thought single women had come further than that.
Now, this became an issue only after the New York Post put a story about it on the front page, and then it was picked up by ABC News and Fox and CNN's Lou Dowd. But should it get even more attention?
Well, I think it should. I mean, and by the way, it became an issue on our radio show, my radio show, immediately. Yes, of course, because you see, again, here is the double standard. It is unimaginable to me if some white male Democrat had, for instance, attacked a white male Republican, pardon me, had, for instance, attacked a black female Democrat for being basically a single woman, saying there's no cost to you because you don't have children. There would have been hell to pay. It would have been Armageddon. And I think it is very striking that Senator Boxer has not yet, to my knowledge, apologized, which she obviously should. Because, look, the Secretary of State's personal status really ought to be off the table when you're talking about matters of war and peace.
Rachel Maddow, you have a view on that?
I think that Senator Boxer probably would have apologized if she had actually attacked Condoleezza Rice for not having any children. Instead, she said, neither of us are in a position where we're going to have a son or daughter in this conflict or a sibling in this conflict. She brought herself into it and therefore, I think, softened what might have otherwise been seen as too personal a blow.
If I may say so, Rachel, she brought herself into it by the context of saying, look, I'm a mom and I'm a grandmom and you're basically nothing.
No,
and
she
truly,
said,
if someone
no,
had
Michael,
done
but we just saw the clip. She said neither of us are going to face having an immediate family member in this conflict. That's not an attack saying you're worse than me and I'm better than you because my kids are somehow more morally relevant here. She didn't attack her, and you can try to make it into that, but I don't think it's going to stick.
Well, again, I think that most American people heard that, saw the reaction of Secretary Rice, just the way that anyone would react in a situation like that. I mean, look, the idea of raising this entire issue. It's like this stupid line, and frankly, I'm tired of it. And there are all kinds of fine arguments against the war. It's a very, very crucial public issue. But the one line that you're hearing again and again is, why doesn't Bush send his 2 daughters? If he believes in this war, if he wants a troop surge, send Jenna and Barbara to fight the war. I mean, how ridiculous is that? First of all, you don't send 22-year-old people. You don't control them anymore. And I can say that, by the way, as a parent.
All right, let me jump in here because there's another media issue I wanted to ask you about, Rachel Maddow. In an interview this week on Fox News with White House counselor Dan Bartlett, Fox anchor Gretchen Carlson, they were talking about hostile enemies in Iraq, and she said the following: hostile enemies right here on the home front. Yesterday, Senator Ted Kennedy proposed a congressional approval being required for a troop surge. What did you make of that kind of language?
Well, I thought that was the kind of attack that ought to get the kind of reaction that Barbara Boxer is instead getting. I mean, actually calling a U.S. senator a hostile enemy to the United States because he disagrees with the president, that's kind of par for the course in Michael, I excuse you from this, absolutely, but that's par for the course in kind of right-wing talk radio. That's the kind of attack that you expect to be kind of pushing the boundaries. You don't necessarily expect that on cable news, even if it is on Fox. I thought that was surprising, and she did go back and correct herself.
I agree. And again, it's over the line and was a stupid thing. The point is, you expect more from a United States senator who's been elected 3 times than you do from a commentator on Fox News.
And Dan Bartlett, by the way, did disagree with that characterization. I want to turn now to this endless spitting match between Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump because an actual journalist has gotten involved. Barbara Walters, who, as you know, is the founder of The View, strongly denied Trump's account that she was unhappy with O'Donnell as her new high-decibel panelist.
Let me say definitively that everything that he said, I said about her is totally untrue.
Here's my official comment.
In a letter to O'Donnell, Trump said Walters had told him that working with her was, and we're quoting here, was like living in hell. Barbara Walters stood by her woman.
That poor, pathetic man.
Yes!
Michael Medved, Barbara Walters is the only serious person here, a serious journalist, I should say. Is she getting tarnished by this whole mud fight?
Well, Barbara Walters, I mean, I think that The View has compromised Barbara Walters' status as a serious journalist a long time ago. This is entertaining.
Why? Because it's a fun talk show?
No, because basically, because a serious journalist, Barbara Walters, if she was a regular on reliable sources, it would be different. But this is The View. And one of the problems with The View is, first of all, I've got to give Rosie O'Donnell credit. She has made The View matter in a way that it didn't matter before in national dialogue. But this conflict with Donald Trump, on my radio show, I mean, I played an old trailer from the movie from 30 years ago, King Kong versus Godzilla. And it says, the whole world, 2 powerful, unstoppable monsters, and the whole world powerless to halt their destructive rampage. And that's basically, I think, what's people dealing with here. It's just you're so astonished that people are behaving in this way. And for Barbara Walters to get directly involved, I guess she had to, I think does tarnish her.
Are you astonished because you expected more dignity from both of them?
Absolutely.
Yes.
But Rachel, what explains the media's just seemingly bottomless fascination with this? I mean, every time one of them pipes up, the clips are played on television.
Well, I think that, we have a real interest in a time when there's a lot of really kind of serious, horrible things going on in the world. Just this week with the debate about the war and the 5-year anniversary of Guantanamo and all of this very serious life and death stuff going on, it makes a lot of sense that we'd prefer to see a no-stakes, no-blood cartoon punch-up between 2 zillionaires. I mean, it's harmless fun. It's kind of like watching a Punch and Judy show. I think it's been a hoot, and it's both of their jobs to get these kind of headlines.
So we're not going to pretend here that that there's any larger meaning to this. It is your basic schoolyard fight between rich people who always like to be in the headlines.
Well, I think there's one little bit of seriousness here, and that is that they're both earning their salaries. It's been good for both of their ratings. Rosie O'Donnell's job on The View is to be a cultural commentator. Donald Trump's job is to keep Donald Trump's name in the news, and they're both doing a great job and earning their keep.
I thought his job was to be a real estate developer.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and I think that the larger cultural meaning you saw in that clip that you played, Howie, from Barbara Walters, where she describes Donald Trump as a poor, pathetic man. Now, you normally look at Donald Trump with his wealth and his wife and all of that as poor and pathetic, but I think what this reminds people is even glamorous celebrities who seem to have everything that the American people are supposed to crave, can behave in a disgusting way and can actually be subject to public insults and grime.
I want to thank you for at least finding a modicum of meaning in this whole thing. Michael Medved, Rachel Maddow, thanks very much
Thank you
for joining us.